Everyone, it's Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be making 3 cards using Spellbinders' brand new Halloween collection for 2021. It was just released in August, and I'm going to be making 3 cards with this collection. So here's the entire collection. There are 3 different sets. So if you look at the right side of the screen, those are all the die sets that they have. There's 3 of them. The one at the top with the witch's hat and Frankenstein, that is called Let's Be Frank. I will be making 2 cards with that die set. And then the one immediately below that at the bottom is called Open House Boo. There are some ghosts, some pumpkins, there are some bats, there's a cat, and there is a sentiment that says Spooky Greetings. And I do have that collection, and I will be making a card with that set. And then up at the top right is the Open House Halloween dies. And those dies correspond to the Spellbinders Open House door base, which I will be making a card with. It was released previously, probably last year, so I'm not quite sure exactly the time frame. But that set does correspond with the house. And in the card examples there on the left, you'll see one of the cards there with the house and that particular die set incorporated in that house. I will be using the Open House door die set for one of my cards today. However, I will not be using the die set up at the top right. I will be using the Open House Boo, which is the bottom die set with the ghosts and the pumpkins. So I'm going to be working with the Let's Be Frank die set first, and this die set has 2 witches' legs. It also has a witch hat, and this first card is going to be a slimline card, and I'm going to have several of the witch walking in one direction. So I've die cut first the legs with the polka dot stockings or pantyhose or socks, whatever you want to call them. And I'm just piecing together. I die cut one set out of black, and then I die cut again out of an orange pattern paper. This was a pattern paper from a Recollections paper pad that I've had in my stash for years. And I just trimmed off the shoe and I pieced it on, or I glued it on to the black. And now I am wanting to have the polka dots through the sock shown in green. So I'm just gluing down that sock to the green cardstock. And then once it's glued down, I'll just use my scissors and trim it off. I found that the easiest way to add the background to those socks rather than having to die cut it in green and piece all the little circles in. But of course you can definitely do it that way if you wanted to. Now as for all the holes in the shoes, I'm going to come back at a later time in this video and put the pieces into the shoes. So you'll see me do that in a little bit. Okay, so here are the legs with the orange shoes. And I'm going to move on and do another set of legs. So I want to use this piece of pattern paper. And because I want my leg to go in the opposite direction of how the die cuts out, I'm going to flip this paper over and die cut it on the reverse of the pattern. So I'm going to run it through my die cut machine just like that. I'm going to die cut it twice to give me these 2 shoes. So this side is actually the side that's supposed to be in front, but I'm flipping it over and using the back side of that die because I want the feet to be pointed towards the left. And the traditional way for this die is to have the feet pointed to the right. So that's the right way that you see there. But I'm flipping them over just like you see, and I'm using the back side of that black cardstock. So I did die cut it twice out of the black cardstock. That will be my base. And then I'm going to just snip off the top part of that shoe where the sock starts. And I'm just going to use that purple portion of the shoe and piece it on or glue it on to the black cardstock. So once those shoes are glued on, I'm going to glue down this entire leg piece onto some orange pattern paper. It's actually the same orange pattern paper that I used for the first set of shoes because I wanted all my colors to match. So even though you're not going to be able to see that pattern quite through the socks, it's okay. I just was going for the same color. So I'm just going to glue that black part on, and then just like I did with the previous set of legs, I'm just going to trim off the part of that cardstock that's just extending past the sock. So now I'm going to move on and do my next set of legs. I'm going to use the reverse of this pattern paper for my shoe. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that pattern paper over and then die cut that 2 times. And then it gives me this pattern. It's just a slightly darker green polka dot on that green pattern paper. So again, it's the same process as the previous two sets of legs. So I just snip off the sock portion of that shoe, and then I have my black cardstock already die cut, and I'm just going to turn them over because I want to use the back side because I want all of my shoes pointing towards the left. And then I'm going to glue down the pattern paper onto the black shoe, and I'm going to do that for both. And I'm going to use the same purple pattern paper that I previously used because I'm going with the same color scheme, and I'm just going to glue down the black portion of that sock right onto that pattern paper for both of those shoes, and then just trim away the excess. So I have a piece of white cardstock that I cut down to 8 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I'm putting it in this embossing folder. I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. This is the Big Dot Slimline embossing folder from Spellbinders. And then I have this piece of pattern paper. It's just a green pattern paper. Wanted it to look a little bit like grass, but I didn't want the actual grass look. And I'm just putting it there at the bottom. That is about 1/8 inch thick. And then I'm just putting it there on that card layer and just trimming off the excess. So it's the same exact width of that card layer. And I'm going to position my witch's feet just along the card. And I just want to make sure I have them where I want them. So I'm just kind of laying everything out before I glue anything down. I'm going to use the witch's hat. Here's what it looks like when the full witch's hat is die cut, but I'm not using the full die cut piece. I die cut just out of some black glitter paper part of the hat, so just the bottom portion of the hat, and I'm actually going to use it here to make it look almost like it's a skirt, because the top part is not even going to be shown. It's just going to be snipped off that card front. So I'm just going to have the legs and then the bottom part of the witch's hat for each one of those witch's legs. I think this is going to be so stinking cute. And I love that glitter black cardstock. That's just some glitter black cardstock that I picked up at Michael's. I believe it's the Recollections brand. And I am using the greeting, Spooky Greetings. This is from the Open House Boo die set that I showed you at the beginning. And I did put double-sided adhesive tape on the back of my black cardstock before running that through the die cut machine. You can see how intricate that die is. So just to try to put glue on the back of those words would be really difficult. So I went ahead and adhered the Spooky Greetings first, because if I didn't, then I may not have had room for it after I put the legs down, because I wanted to make those words kind of like as a guide, so that now I can position the legs with knowing that the words are already in place. So I go ahead and start gluing all of those legs down. And I actually still ended up needing a little bit more room for these purple shoes, but I ended up gluing it down and picking it back up, and then I ended up getting some of that black cardstock stuck in where I don't want it. So I'm just coming in with my sand eraser and just erasing away that piece of cardstock that got stuck there at the bottom, so I didn't have that black spot, and that worked out really well. So now I'm going to go ahead and adhere the witches hats, or I guess now I should just call them skirts. So I'll go ahead and position them where I want them, glue them down, and then I'll just trim off whatever's extending beyond that card layer. So now I'm going to die cut just the same piece of black glitter paper, just a little scrap piece where those buckles are in the shoe, and I'm just going to piece in the black glitter cardstock onto the shoe, and I'm going to do that for all three of them. And then I have this particular die, which I'm going to die cut out of some gold glitter cardstock, and I'm going to put that as the buckle on all of those shoes. So I'm just going to glue that down on all of them. Next, I'm going to put this card layer onto a Slimline card base, and my base is an 8.5 by 3.5 card base. So to get your card base, you're just going to take a piece of 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, cut it to 8.5 by 7, score it at the 3.5 inch mark on the 7 inch side, and then just glue that down, and that is my completed card. So that's card 1, and moving on to card 2, I'll be using the same die set. It's the Let's Be Frank die set. So in addition to the witch hat and legs, you also get this Frankenstein, and this die set is super easy to put together. So first I did the head out of some green cardstock, and I'm just inking up the edges with some green ink to add just some definition to the face, and I'm making sure I get under all of those cut marks in that cardstock. So underneath the eyes, around the head, underneath the mouth, and then I have the top of the head, which I die cut out of the same color, and inking up the edges of that as well. So they give you the top of the head. You can actually put it up on some foam to add some dimension to your die cut shape. I also took that die and I die cut it out of white cardstock because I want to get the circles for the eyes, which I'm just cutting out, just fussy cutting out some circles, and I will be gluing those white circles right down onto that green die cut shape. Don't worry about how they're not complete circles, because once you add the head portion, it's going to cover up the tops of those white circles for the eyes. So I took the die for the eyeballs and I die cut out of some black cardstock. I did put double-sided adhesive on the back of that cardstock before running it through my die cut machine, and then I could just stick them on. I don't have to worry about gluing them on. And they do have a center hole cut out, and it just shows the white cardstock directly through the center hole. So the eyes are complete, and next I am going to add these little screws. I guess these are screws that are coming out of the side of his neck, and I just die cut those out of some silver mirror cardstock, and I'm just going to add those there onto the green, and then I die cut the hair out of black cardstock. I'm going to add it to the top of the head, and then I will be able to turn that piece over and add some foam to the back. This is just some foam dots that came in one of the Spellbinders card kits, so I had some extra, and I'm just going to add 6 foam squares to the top of the back of that head, and then I'm going to add it to my die cut shape, and that just adds some nice dimension to his face. I'm going to be bringing in the Spellbinders Deckled rectangle dies. These are some nesting dies. I loved the edge on them. They just kind of reminded me of Halloween because they weren't so straight. They just had this fun edge around it. So I die cut one out of black. That's the largest one that you see there on the table. And then the next largest one I die cut out of white. So the Frankenstein head is going on the white die cut shape, and then once I add it there, once I glue it down, I'm actually going to poke out. I did die cut the head out of just some black cardstock, and I just poking out the inside of the nose and just popping those onto the die cut shape so that he has the black nostrils there for his nose. And then I'll add the white to the black die cut rectangle, and then I'm going to take a black A2 size card base that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I have this piece of pattern paper, and I cut that down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I just added it to the card base. And then I'm using the Spooky Greetings from the Open House Boo die set, and I die cut that out of some silver fun foam, and it is sticky on the back, and I'm going to add that as the sentiment. Now I do want to mention the pattern paper that I've used. Most of this pattern paper, this one in particular, and then some of the ones on the previous card, were from a Queen & Company paper pad, and it was called Fright Fest. I'm not sure if they have any more in stock, but if I can find it, I will link it in the description with all of the other supplies. And then this fun foam, this silver glitter fun foam, is also from Queen & Company, and I do know that they do have that in stock. So I'm going to go ahead and add the Spooky Greetings there to the bottom, and then I will add the Frankenstein rectangle up towards the top. And then I die cut another one of those rectangle shapes out of white, and I'm just going to add that to the inside so you can write your message, and that will complete this card. Moving on to my last card, here is a look at the open house door base from Spellbinders. This is not new. They've had this on their website for a long time. So it comes with the door, it comes with some leaves, there's even a doormat that says hello, and Spellbinders has come out with dies that correspond to this in different seasons. So you can do a Thanksgiving theme, or fall theme. You can also do a Christmas theme. There's a Christmas set, and then the Halloween set that I showed you at the very beginning. So I am actually going to be using this set to make a Halloween card, but I don't have the open house Halloween that goes with it, which includes the Hey Boo for the doormat. It also has some bats and some spider webs for the windows. I don't have that, but I am going to be using the open house Boo collection to incorporate that with this card, and this will be a slimline card. So I've already die cut all of my pieces. You saw me there earlier just inking up the edges of some of the windows just to add some more definition to those windows. I just inked them up in some gray ink. So I chose to go with a black door, and then the windows I chose yellow for the background just because it would look like maybe there was a light coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the two windows there on the top of the door. Notice that I've also die cut there off to the right the doormat or the rug beneath the door in some pattern paper. I used the same pattern paper that I used in the previous cards. So I just wanted to have a little something since I didn't have the Hey Boo for the doormat and I couldn't put words on it. I wanted to have a little something extra, so I chose to use pattern paper rather than solid cardstock for that doormat. So this little mailbox opening, I did some mirror cardstock. It's just some silver mirror cardstock. Same with the doorknob. So I'm going to add the purple piece at the top of the door, and then I'm going to put some pumpkins together. So I die cut the shadow layer out of yellow and then the top layer out of orange. And I'm just adding some orange ink to add some definition to those pumpkins. Now the pumpkin actually has several dies. You have the shadow layer, then the layering piece, which I did out of the orange. So I'm just gluing the orange to the yellow. There are the 3 different size pumpkins. And then for the top of the pumpkin, at this stage, I actually forgot to die cut another die. So I just die cut the top portion out of the orange, but there's actually another die that is for the stem that you can die cut in a different color, and you'll see me come back in the end and fix it. So right now my pumpkins just have an orange stem because I didn't feel like paper piecing, so I just glued that on to the top. But later on you'll see me come back in and add the brown stem to the top of the pumpkin. So I also die cut out the ghosts, and I'm just adding some gray ink to the sides just to add some more definition to those ghosts. I didn't want them to be solid white. I just wanted to have a little bit of definition so it looked like there was a shadow. And here's the window piece for the top of the door, which I die cut out of yellow for the light coming through, and then the gray cardstock for the top piece. And I'm just adding some gray ink to add more definition to that. And I also want to mention this is the piece that if you had the open house Halloween set, there is a spider web for the front of the window. So I'm bringing in a stencil. I'm using some of my scrapbook.com mint tape to hold that stencil down, and the stencil is a Picket Fence Studios stencil. It's called Slimline English Brick Wall, and I did cut a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock to 3 1/4 by 8 1/4, and I'm just inking up the stencil to make a brick wall scene on this paper. The inks that I'm using are Pinkfresh Studio inks. I start out with Metropolis as my lightest color, and then I come in on the edges with the Licorice, which is a darker gray. And then I still didn't feel like it was dark enough on the edges, so you will also see me come in with some black Soot Distress ink and put some black ink there on the edges of that stencil. Okay, so I'm going to lift this stencil up and then you'll be able to see what it looks like. And I love that brick wall scene. I think it looks so great, especially for a Halloween scene. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting this card together. Here is my mat. I did die cut this extra piece just to make it look like this mat, the doormat, has some dimension to it, or almost like it's a 3D appearance. Now, if you had the open house Halloween set, there is a die in that set that you can die cut and put on top of that doormat that says Hey Boo. And I don't have that. So if you happen to have that, use your sentiment there that says Hey Boo. So I add the door, I add the window above the door, and then I'm going to start just placing the other die cut pieces just to see where exactly I want them. I did die cut the Spooky Greetings word, again putting double-sided adhesive on the back of that cardstock before running it through the die cut machine. and then I'm going to go ahead and place the greeting up towards the top. And it's important that I place the greeting first to make sure that I have enough room for everything else, because if I start gluing down the ghosts and the pumpkins, specifically the ghosts, because those are going to be towards the top of the card, I want to make sure that I still have enough room for that greeting. So if I glued the ghost down first, I might not have room to put the greeting. So that's why I'm adding that first, and then I'll be able to place everything else afterwards. There's also a cat die cut in this set, a black cat, die cut it out of some black cardstock, and I'm just taking a piece of white scrap paper and placing it behind the head, because there are all these openings from the eyes to the ears to the nose that I didn't want to have to piece in all the different color pieces for the face. So I decided I'm just going to take some white cardstock, just snip around to make sure it's not showing on the sides, and then I'll go ahead and glue the cat down, and then later on you'll see me come in with a marker and just color in different color inks to fill in the ears, the eyes, and the nose. I just thought that was much easier than having to piece in the different color pieces of cardstock. So here I'm gluing down the cat. There are two different types of tails, so just pick whichever tail you like best and tuck it behind the cat and then glue it down. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue down the pumpkins. I'm going to have one of them on top of the other, and then I'm going to have a ghost coming out of the pumpkin and then some ghosts coming out of the windows towards the top of the card. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and just put some glue inside the eyes of the ghost. I did die cut the black cardstock, and I am piecing in the eyes. If you wanted to, you can do like I did with the cat and just put a little piece of black cardstock behind the head and snip away. That might be easier, but I had already glued them down and honestly didn't think about it at the time. So now all the eyes are done, and I did die cut some bats. I'm going to include some bats towards the top of the card. There's a larger bat and a smaller bat. I don't have the larger bat here. I'm just using two of the smaller bats. And then here's where I die cut that extra piece from the pumpkin. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down a brown piece, and then I die cut another orange piece to put on top. So you can see how that stem now is brown for that pumpkin. And then I don't need to worry about the one underneath because it's not showing. And then the smaller pumpkin I didn't end up using on the card. So now I'm going to glue this down to a black piece of cardstock, and that black cardstock is 3 3/8 by 8 3/8. And here's where I come in with my Copic markers and just fill in purple for the ears and the nose. And then for the eyes, I will come in with yellow. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that on a Slimline card base. My Slimline card base is 8.5 by 3.5. So again, just take your piece of cardstock, cut it down to 8.5 by 7, and score it at the 3.5 inch mark on the 7-inch side. And I really love how this card turned out. So you'll have to leave me a comment down below and let me know which card was your favorite. I'd love to hear from you. And then if you're interested in any of these products, please take a look at the description box at the links down below. I will have everything linked. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more card making tutorials. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.